The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 30-second webinar on the Secret Doctrine. This and all subsequent sessions will be available on makara.us under the subheading Moria Federation Webinars. Hang on just a second. I have to update my file. Be right back with you. Somehow I opened an older version because I'm recognizing that I'm not, that there's some text that wasn't there that I just recently wrote. So let me see if I can pull this up. Okay. Sorry for the disruption, everyone, but you know, sometimes things don't go perfectly. Let's see. I have to figure out where this is. This is in the Secret Doctrine. Okay, as it should be. Almost there. Let's see what we have this time. Well. All right. I'm not sure what to do about this. What I'm struggling with, folks, is that I use two computers in this process, and the second computer is not bringing up the file that you now see on your screen. So I'm doing a little bit of struggling, trying to figure out why that could possibly be the case. It's never happened before. Same name. Yeah. Okay.
While you're working on that, Francis, we have a request to increase the volume because someone's sound is maxed and they're having difficulty hearing.
Okay, I could do that. Also, I've been sort of mumbling because I'm trying to get this figured out.
Yeah,
So
my sound is really good. How are you guys'? Mine's pretty loud already.
Mine's good.
Okay. Could we use our books and you assign us where to read?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm just going to have to. Oh, very weird. That is.
Yeah, other people say their sound is good too. So I think, Beverly, it's a problem on your end.
All right. Dropbox. All right. Well, that's a puzzle that I seem to be unable to solve at this moment. What's happening is an older version of my notes has open on my second computer, so I'm just going to have to wing it and go by what I remember. That's fine. Okay. So anyway, I want to give a special welcome to those of you who are new this time. It's almost never this disorganized, but you know, we are human beings after all on this side. I had a request about possible study assignments, and from 2 or 3 people emailed me and said, well, is there any way we could study this material? And what you can do is that at the end of the webinar, the play here. You can note the page number on that we're at Secret Doctrine and read 4 or 5 pages ahead and study that if you'd like. And that will definitely help your comprehension and allow you to formulate, comments and questions that could be relevant. So, yeah, here you see the page number at the bottom of the page there, that SD192. That just means volume 1 of the Secret Doctrine, page 92. So you'll know where to start for reading ahead. And you do that at the end of the webinar series. Okay, so this, and also I'm going to email you this this URL BL so that you could paste this in the chat box.
Okay.
This is a terrific online copy of the Secret Doctrine, which I've been using for this series. So the page numbers are also, and it's free. All you have to do is click on this and you'll have your own copy. If you'd like to study and you'd like to think in terms of page numbers, even if you have a physical copy of the Secret Doctrine. Okay, so this and all subsequent sessions are available on Makara under the subheading Moria Federation webinars. And now we have our own series in progress section at the top. And you can see here my webinar series, and it also has BL's webinar series, which she co-hosts. So take a look, makara.us. All right. So as is our habit, we'll start by checking in on HPB's travels in India, as described in old diary leaves by Colonel Olcott. For the last couple of months, they've been cruising down the Buckingham Canal in southern India. This month, they've disembarked and they're finding their way overland under very trying circumstances. So could we get 3 readers for this, please? We'll just start one at a time. Actually, is probably the best way to do it.
Okay, 3 separate pages.
Yeah, there'll be 3 separate pages. Right?
Okay. Michael, will you start first, and then Joe, and then I'll do the 3rd one?
Here we go. The journey was very tedious and hot. The thermometer standing at 98 degrees Fahrenheit in shade, and the coolies keeping up night and day during the 3 days we were on the road. A monotonous refrain which at last became terribly trying to the nerves. Then at night, they carried large torches made of a mop of cotton twist, saturated with coconut oil, which burnt with a cloud of smoke that almost choked us in the palanquins and made a most villainous smell. They were carried at either side of each palanquin so that the coolies might see any snakes that might be coiled in the path. And as the wind blew across our path, there was no escaping the smoke from the torch on the windward side. And when we had the chance to look at each other at the next halt, we found that we and our clothes were smutted almost black. It was compensation enough, however, to see the jamandar, or head coolie, kill a big cobra on which the forward bearers would almost certainly have trodden, but for the torchlight.
Okay, and next up.
Clintour was reached at sunset on the 3rd day, and we were plunged at once into a scene of tumultuous welcome. The whole population, they told us, saving those too old, young, or infirm to be about at night, had come outside the town to meet us. They numbered thousands, and every one of them seemed determined to come close enough to have a good look at us. The result may be imagined. Our progress was like forcing one's way through a compact wall of flesh. We were first taken to a tent where we had refreshments and introductions to the notables of the place. But the crowd became so importunate that this business was cut short, and HPB and I had to mount on chairs to show ourselves. Then a short speech had to be made, and only then were we put into some sort of conveyance, jampans, I believe, and moved on in the procession. The streets were jammed with people from house to house, and they could only move at a snail's pace.
Okay, and finally,
Limelights and bangle-colored fires blazed about us at every step, and it was really curious to watch the lighting up of HPB's massive head and shoulders with the different glares. As she preceded me, I had a capital chance to observe the artistic effects. A more truly popular ovation could not be imagined, for all the elements were there, including the continuous roar of cheering that ran along with us, a river of sound, all the way to our destination. Of torches there was no end, and Gunter was alight as by day. 2 triumphal arches spanned the principal streets. Arrived at the house, we had to receive and reply to 2 addresses in English and 2 in Telugu, the tone of exaggerated compliment in all of them, making us feel like a pair of fools, and putting me to a strain to find words to answer them with proper reserve.
thanks, VL. Okay, folks, I'm afraid that I've had a very strange kind of meltdown here. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of figuring out.
Okay,
The
while you're,
problem is, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, while you're doing that, Catherine has her hand up, and she has had since she joined us. So let me see if there's something I
Sure.
can do to help her. Catherine, can we help you? Your hand is up.
Yes. Well, this is the first time I've used you. I've used this launcher thing, and I can't get any picture. I can only get a blank page with "Let's get started." Is that right?
No, you should have. You should be able to put that down. Minimize it so that you can see Francis's screen.
Right.
Okay, and if you can't, if Francis's screen is maybe minimized, you should see there's this little blue flower-like thing down in the tray of your open. Click that. That should bring up Francis's screen that he's working on right now, with a picture of all the fireworks going off. And
I got that. Underneath, something's blocking it. I've got a thing. How would you like to listen, with computer audio or phone call?
You have to respond to that.
I can't. Well, I've done that. I've
Okay.
clicked on audio. Don't use audio, and then I can't close it. Wait a minute. I'm really sorry to be such a nuisance. What a nuisance I am. So sorry.
Well, that's okay.
So
It keeps us distracted while Francis is going through Mercury retrograde over here.
Yeah. I didn't know my hand was up. Lower hand. There we are. Oh, now. Raise hand. Okay. Am I all right now? Have I done the right thing?
You've done the right thing now. Do you have your, can you see the picture now?
I can see a picture with, yes. Yes,
Okay.
I can. Yes.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me mute you again. There.
Okay, what seems to have happened is I use Dropbox for all my files, and it seems like they are not updating the files, even though I've saved the recent version. So what I'm going to have to do is email to myself this copied version and then open it on this other computer. I'm really sorry for this, but it should really only take a couple of minutes. Okay, so I need to move to.
Okay, we have another hand up. Maybe somebody's offering to entertain us. Yes, Yvonne.
Okay, BL, I've been curious about this all along for many years. She's traveling with Olcott. Who is he to her? Do they think that this is her husband? Why does she travel with him? Is this for protection? Because a woman can't travel. I'm curious about the relationship and why she travels with him.
It's an excellent question. I'll try to answer it as I work. Actually, BL, why don't you take me off the main screen here? Put your own screen back on while I get into this information here. Because I don't want to reveal everybody's addresses and stuff. Can you do that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was talking away. Just give me a second here. Okay. Now you can explain to us who Henry Olcott was.
Okay. Good. I think I'm going to be able to solve this problem. Henry Olcott was a Platonic partner who was deeply involved in the esoteric teachings and was a reinstated Buddhism in southern India almost single-handedly, taking on the entire English establishment, which was trying to eradicate Buddhism and bring on Christianity. And, you know, he successfully fought them and became a kind of hero. So they really had equal status in the eyes of the Southern Indians of the 1880s, which is when this all took place. Okay, almost there, folks.
I see another hand up. Okay. Hi, Joanna. You have a question?
Hi, I was just, not a question, just a comment. We just came, Martha and I just came from Esoteric Advent, and Helena and Shelton completely lost their sound. We could hear one another, and they could not hear us, and they're the leaders of that group. So Mercury is definitely creating havoc in the computer world at this point. It's just a funny, just this levity. I'll be quiet.
No, please. Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is extraordinarily challenging, but I am getting there. Let's see.
Did you send me that URL?
What's that? Are you talking to me?
Yep.
What you're on? Oh no, not yet. I'm just trying to get my webinar back on track here. I'll do that in a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's right.
Well, BL, while we're waiting, I had pulled it up and I put the URL in the chat box for everyone.
Thank you. One less thing you have to do, Francis.
Great.
And for those of you who like to follow along, it's a really wonderful thing to have up on your computer, as well as Francis's screen.
All right. I'm almost with you.
And remember that he puts his slides there with each recording, because he cuts and pastes different parts of it and overlays it in his slides. So having the Secret Doctrine and being able to read from that and look at his slides is also very helpful. So thank you for sharing your slides, Francis.
Okay, we are back. Could you bring me back on? And if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Or I can do it. Let's see here.
I've already done it. You should have the...
Show my screen.
There you
right?
go.
And here we go. All right, folks. Gosh. All right. All right. Well, in our 5 years together, BL, that's a first. What happened is, on my second computer, I had the very first time I saved my notes, which was about a quarter of the content of, as it is now. So I just simply had to restore it. There was no way I could wing it. So there you have it. Okay. We wound up our last session. Near the end of the commentary on verse 3 of stanza 4, while considering the meaning behind the sacred animals that represent the four arms of the fixed cross. So let's start by rereading the verse 3 of stanza 4, where we're on, while considering the meaning behind the sacred animals. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Okay, let me go to Carrie, please. Can you read that for us?
Yes. From the effulgency of light, the ray of the ever darkness, sprung in space the reawakened energies, the one from the egg, the 6 and the 5. Then the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5. The twice 7, the sum total. And these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa, the rupa, and the force of divine man, the sum total. And from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers within the holy four.
Thank you, Carrie. Nicely read. As a further review, let's reread this paragraph. Actually, Carrie, why don't you just continue? It's a short paragraph.
The sacred animals are found in the Bible as well as in the Kabbalah, and they have their meaning, a very profound one too, on the page of the origins of life. In the Sefer Jezira, it is stated that God engraved in the Holy Four the throne of his glory, the Ophanim, wheels of the world spheres, the seraphim, the sacred animals, and the ministering angels. And from these three, the air, water, and fire or ether, he formed his habitation. Thus was the world made through 3 seraphim, Sefer, Safar, and Sipur, or through number, numbers, and numbered. With the astronomical key, these sacred animals become the signs of the zodiac.
Thank you, Carrie. And then one last review item. This paragraph from later in the SD describes this evangelical zoolatry. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yvonne, can you read that for us, please?
Ezekiel's vision, the evangelical zoology, the bull, the eagle, the lion, and the angel. In reality, the cherub or seraph, the fiery winged serpent, is as much pagan as that of the Egyptians or Chaldeans. These four animals are, in reality, the symbols of the four elements and of the four lower principles in man. Nevertheless, they correspond physically and materially to the four constellations that form, so to speak, the suite or cortege of the solar god, and occupied during the winter solstice the four cardinal points of the zodiacal circle. These four animals may be seen in many of the Roman Catholic New Testaments where the portraits of the evangelists are given. They are the animals of Ezekiel's Merkabah.
Thank you. Okay, now let's take a look at the Theosophical Glossary entry on the threefold seraphim listed here, Sephir, Saphar, and Sipur. Can we get a reader for this?
Yes. Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Seraphim, Hebrew, from the root word seraph, to burn. Fiery, burning, venomous, poisonous. The word came to have the significance of serpents, referring to those beings described in Isaiah 6:2 as possessing 6 wings, guarding the divine throne, and endowed with a voice with which they praise the deity. They are the symbols of Jehovah and of all the other demiurgi who produce out of themselves 6 sons or likenesses, 7 with their creator. The later Jewish writings they are associated with the cherubim and the ophanim, wheels of Ezekiel. They parallel the Hindu Nagas, semi-divine beings of serpent character. The seraphim are the fiery serpents of heaven, which we find in a passage describing Mount Meru as the exalted mass of glory, the venerable haunt of gods and heavenly choristers, not to be reached by sinful men, because guarded by serpents. They are called the avengers and the winged wheels. Avengers in the sense of being the agents of karma. They are the flames, a class of Dhyani Chauhans who dried the turbid dark waters with which the earth was covered in an early stage of its development. In the Kabbalistic hierarchy of angels, the seraphim correspond with the 5th Sephirah, Geburah. In the ancient Syrian system, they are equivalent to the sphere of the nebulae and comets. The celestial hierarchy adopted by Dionysus, the pseudo-Arapagite, ranks them first. In the hierarchy of emanations proceeding from the cosmic monad, the seraphim precede the cherubim in emanational order. Because in the hierarchical scheme, the seraphim stand for the formative or creative fires, the spiritual archetypes, whereas the cherubim are the builders of forms and hence are the Rupa class themselves, Thus the seraphim belong to the Arupa class, which works through and in the cherubim or Rupa class. Thus the seraphim, whose color is the spiritual red or spiritual fire, proceed both in time and in hierarchical dignity, the cherubim, whose color is blue. The idea being that before manifestation of both mind and of forms can take place, there must be in the cosmic monad the awakening of divine desire, signified as fiery or flamy color, spiritual red. As the Veda has it, desire first arose in it.
Thanks, Scott. Again, we see referenced the 7 in 1 demiurgi, who are the, quote, formative or creative fires, the spiritual archetypes. I didn't highlight it, but down at the bottom there, you see that the seraphim belong to the Arupa class, which works through and in the cherubim or Rupa class. In other words, the formless working in the form aspect of the cherubim, and they can be distinguished by, in the illustration, the red on the left would be the seraphim proper, and then the blue would be the cherubim, usually associated with them. Okay. Now on to the footnote, which references the term seraphim. If we could get a reader, please.
I'll go ahead and read it. This is the literal translation from the 9th and 10th sections. 10 numbers without what? 1. The Spirit of the living God, who liveth in eternities, voice and spirit and word, and this is the Holy Spirit. 2. Spirit out of spirit. He designed and hewed therewith 22 letters of foundation, 3 mothers, and 7 double and 12 signal, and 1 spirit out of them. 3. Water out of spirit. He designed and hewed with them the barren and the void, mud and earth. He designed them as a flower bed, hewed them as a wall, covered them as a paving. 4. Fire out of water. He designed and hewed therewith the throne of glory and the wheels and the seraphim and the holy animals and the ministering angels. And of the 3 he founded his dwelling, as it is said. He makes his angels spirits and his servants fiery flames. Which words founded his dwelling show clearly that in the Kabbalah, as in India, the deity was considered as the universe and was not, in his origin, the extra cosmic God as he is now.
So thoughts or questions? Pretty dense, esoteric paragraph. The quote, 9th and 10th sections are from the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, which is one of the earliest extant books from the Jewish tradition about the creation of the world. It's actually quite esoteric. It's the most esoteric Jewish literature that I've run across. Of course, a lot of that is held secret. It's interesting that the 22 letters were designed and hewed, I guess, out of atmic or perhaps mental substance. In the upper right is an ingenious illustration showing the 3 triple, 7 double, and 12 single Hebrew letters in the form of a triangle and 2 stars. Could we get a reader for this?
Yes. Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
Yeah. The above symbol illustrates the order of creation outlined in the Jewish Kabbalistic work Sefer Yetzirah, Hebrew Book of Formation. The central star contains the 3 Hebrew mother letters, which represent the 3 primal sounds and correlate to the elements air, water, and fire, making up the 3 horizontal bars of the tree of life. The central star represents the 7 double letters, words with 2 pronunciations, and the 7 vertical paths on the tree. The outer ring represents the 12 simple letters and the 12 diagonal paths on the tree. symbol.net.
Interesting that the letters form the paths between the sephira and are not the sephira themselves, thus suggesting a phohatic potency of the 22 articulated elements of the word, which, by the way, directly correlates to the 22 major arcana of the Tarot. Here's a passage from the opening verse of the Sefer Yetzirah. Could we get a reader for this?
Malia, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. In 32 mysterious paths of wisdom, Yah, eternal of hosts, the living Elohim, dwelling in eternity, engraved and created his word in 3 sepharim, in writing, number, and word. 10 sephirot out of nothing, 22 foundation letters, 3 mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 simples.
Thank you. So this is right out of the first verse of the Yetzer Sefer, and so it describes this quality of writing, number, and word. There are literally thousands of versions of the Tree of Life described in the Kabbalah. I like this one in the style of a London subway map, which also shows the Tarot Arcana. Okay, back to the text and the last sentence of the footnote, which reads, which words founded his dwelling show clearly that in the Kabbalah, as in India, the deity was considered as the universe and was not in his origin the extra cosmic God he is now. So HPB is making a distinction between the ever-present, all-pervading, extra cosmic God and a God in form, which is at its most supreme in manifested substance, the universe itself, right? And she actually is fond of pointing out that Jehovah is very much a God of manifestation and not a extra cosmic or supreme deity. So any thoughts or questions on anything in verse 3? We were just finishing up this verse from last time.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
In the italics you have there, I was just going to point out in the version I have of the SD here, the 6 volume 1,
right,
which is what, 1938. There's a significant change that I think is important. Where it says on the 3rd line there, it ends with the word 3 and the colon.
Yeah, right. Water out of spirit. 3, water out of spirit.
Oh, sorry, going up above. 2, spirit out of spirit. In the
spirit out of spirit. Yeah.
In the original version, the 1888 version, they have spirit out of spirit. It was changed later to air out of spirit, and therefore 3 reads as water out of air. I like that as a descending form, and it deals with elements better too.
Right, and where were we just reading in this? Oh gosh, it's amazing how quickly we cover. In this, I think he was talking about the fact that it goes spirit, air, water. Where is that? Somewhere in here. Anyway, yeah, that's a good catch. I actually like that better. And you know, I have to acknowledge the fact that this later version of the SD often is superior because of the corrections that it introduced, and I think in this case that is generally a correction and not just an alternative reading, because there's no way somebody's going to change the manuscript or the direct transcription of HPB's manuscript. So my guess is that that's a legitimate correction. Okay, so yes, anyone else before we move on? Okay, having finished HPB's commentary, let's take a look at the verse itself. The first phrase, from the effulgency of light, the ray of the ever darkness, takes us all the way back to stanza 3, verse 3, which states, darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. This ray of the ever darkness is the source of all manifested light. It is to light as the first logos is to the third, as the universal root is to what Simon Magus calls, or Magus calls, that which has stood, stands, and will stand. In other words, the first singularity, which is the third logos. The next phrase, sprung in space the reawakened energies, Dzyan Chohans, references the 7-in-1 who first appeared as Oyaohu the Younger in verse 7 of stanza 3, quote, he shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The one is 4, and 4 takes to itself 3, and the union produces the Sapta, in whom are the 7. Cosmically, these are the 7 spirits before the throne. Systemically, they are the 7 ray lords of the sacred planets of our solar system. Though the term Dhyani Kohan is also used for lesser offices, such as the Lord of a Chain, not that much lesser, but you get the point. What they all have in common, the common thread, the as above, so below, is that they take an active part in the architectural ideation of the universe, solar system, or scheme, whatever their purview is. So, whereas stanza 3 introduced the first singularity, stanza 4 focuses on the septonate contained within that singularity and the process of that manifestation. The final phrase of the first sentence, the 1 from the egg, the 6 and the 5, then the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, the twice 7, the sum total, equates two numbers that reference pi, that's 1065 and 31415, with the quote, reawakened energies. The egg here representing the 0 in 1065. But these relational numbers only come into play once the third logos begins its work of creation, thus activating the energy of pi, that diameter. For the circle in and of itself, outside its relationship with its own diameter, represents the realm of no number. Through this initial relationship, spirit and form, involution is initiated. The first pair of opposites, and thus duality, comes into being. And the blueprints of the form world begin to exert their influence. This is symbolized by the twice 7, 7 above, mirrored into 7 below, which together form the quote, sum total. The next sentence states, and these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa, formless, the rupa, with bodies, and the force of divine man, the sum total. Listed here are 5 types: the essences, flames, elements, builders, and numbers, which we're told together represent the functionality of the diameter, and thus may possibly be directly assigned to the 5 numbers 31415. The 3 words, and these are, that identify the 31415 to what we normally think of as subjective entities, make this a truly extraordinary statement. pardon the weird font. I originally developed this line of thought years ago for my series on sacred geometry. Okay, HPB suggests that these five are divided into two categories: the arupa, or formless, and the rupa, or form-bearing. The formless and form-based can be seen as the twice seven, one a causal and one a manifest seven, a concept found in ancient Egyptian theology, as well as in stanza 3, verse 4, which reads, "Then the three fall into the four. The radiant essence becomes seven inside, seven outside." Okay. To start, we might hypothesize, and I should say what we're starting, to start this interrelation between the builders and the essences, etc., and the numbers themselves. We might hypothesize that the ones in 3, 1, 4, 1, 5 represent the formless, and that the 3, 4, and 5 represent the form aspect. 3, 4, and 5, you may remember, are the numbers used in the Pythagorean triangle and have a Sat Chit Ananda relationship of spirit, form, and the consciousness that connects form with spirit. Together forming the cosmic 12, they represent the fundamental elements of manifestation. Okay, out of this list of 5, the most likely candidates for the formless, represented by the 1s and 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, seem to be the essences and the flames. In Esoteric Healing, DK says, these 7 great lives can be seen and known as the informing essences and the active energies in all that is manifested and tangible upon the physical plane, as well as on all the planes of divine expression. We find a description of HPB's other arupic element, the flames, in this old commentary from Rays and Initiations, which, by the way, is the very last sentence of DK's final book. Naught is left save flame primordial. That flame absorbs, resolves, receives, and remains. When all that is has traversed the flame, then time is not. So I think, given these 2 examples, we can at least hypothesize that the essences and the flames give us the 2 ones in our 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. But what about the rubric or form-bearing numbers? We're told in the 2nd stanza of Dzyan, in a treatise on cosmic fire, a completely different set of stanzas of Dzyan, by the way, that the builders, quote, built in many spheres, beginning with the 3rd, unquote. This suggests that the 3rd, or Atmic plane, the highest plane of the spiritual triad, and the source of the 3rd aspect of intelligent activity, is where the builders initiate the response to the will of God. This is Sat, or spirit in form. Since the builders are natural agents for the carrying out of the form-building 3rd aspect of deity, this seems a rational placement. So we'll pencil in the builders as representative of our first number in the 31415. It's not that much of a stretch to hypothesize that the builders use the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth, in their form-building process, which gives us our 3rd number, the number 4. It's in this relationship between the builders and the elements that we see an actual demonstration of that super-rational function called pi. So we have 3 associated with the builders, 4 with the elements, which leaves 5. But why would 5 be associated with the numbers? First of all, referencing the second stage in the progression, which includes number, numbers, and numbered. The term numbers relates to the 7 who issue from the 1. That's the seraphim that we just talked about. In her commentary on verse 5 of the stanza, HPB says, Svabhavat is the mystic essence. There's that word again. The plastic root of physical nature. Numbers, when manifested, the number in its unity of substance on the highest plane. So how is this creative agency called numbers associated with 5? Inherent within any geometrical representation of the number 5 are the properties of phi, also known as the golden mean, which is a mathematical relationship that determines how the natural world manifests, from sunflowers to galaxies throughout the entire universe. So my hypothesis is that through the use of the super rational functions of pi, the builders, the 3, manifest the numbered, which is the universe in all its diversity, through the impress of phi, which is the directive of the 7 who are the numbers. It's interesting that the 1s stand between the 3 and 4, and the 4 and the 5. I've noticed this same phenomena in Sanskrit words, wherein the A, like the 1, can be seen as standing for spirit. In both cases, it seems to be at least a metaphor for the ever-present spirit penetrating the form aspect. In the case of 31415, the spirit in the form of flames and essence is certainly part of its directed potency. Okay, the final phrase in the sentence is, and the force of divine man, the sum total. The divine man can be interpreted as 1, the macroprosopos, or universal man, and or 2, that which distinguishes the animal from humankind. They're actually quite interconnected. HPB says, when the perfect man, the Metatron, is raised, i.e. divine man, indwells in the animal man, it, the serpent, becomes 3 spirits, that is to say, is Atma, Buddhi, Manas, unquote. The third meaning for divine man is the Manu. An entry from the Transactions of the Blavatsky Lodge by HPB states, well, let's get a reader for this. I've been talking for a while.
Okay. Lynn, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Manu is the synthesis, perhaps, of the Manasa, and he is a single consciousness in the same sense that while all the different cells of which the human body is composed are different and varying consciousnesses, there is still a unit of consciousness, which is the man. But this unit, so to say, is not a single consciousness. It is a reflection of thousands and millions of consciousnesses, which a man has absorbed.
Okay, I hope you're starting to see the connection between all these forms of what are called in various writings the divine man. So whether seen in the singular or as a collective, the divine man is the consciousness aspect bridging spirit and form, often associated with the number 5. The quote, sum total, may relate to the fact that the human kingdom is the goal of all the lesser kingdoms, and that it is in the Saptaprana, the 7-fold man plant, that is humanity, that all the higher kingdoms have their root. Indeed, the 5th kingdom, the form aspect of the 5th kingdom doesn't change at all from the 4th, rather than perfecting or the elements of it, but it's the consciousness aspect within that same form. Okay, finally, and from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the Sacred Fathers, the Petries, within the Holy Four. Later in the first volume of the Secret Doctrine, HPB references the sparks, the sacred animals, and the Holy Four. Could we get a reader for this short quote?
Sure. Lynn, can you read that for us too? Two short
The
ones.
sacred animals and the flames or sparks within the Holy Four refer to the prototypes of all that is found in the universe and the divine thought in the root, which is the perfect cube, or the foundation of the cosmos, collectively and individually.
So, the Holy Four, the perfect cube, and the tetractys all refer to the same root phenomena, summed up in stanza 3, verse 7, as the one is four. The quote, messengers of the Sacred Fathers, the Petries within the Holy Four, refers to the cyclic avatars that come to redirect humanity onto the path of return. Okay, so that's it for my analysis of verse 3. Is there any thoughts or questions about anything in this verse? All righty then. Let's move on to verse 4, which reads, this was the army of the voice, the divine mother of the seven. The sparks of the seven are subject to, and the servant of the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh of the seven. These sparks are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modelers. For thus stands the eternal Nidana, the Oi Ha Hu, the permutation of Oi A O Hu. Okay, let's take a look at the footnote, which references Oi Ha Hu. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Martha, can you read that for us? You're self-muted.
The literal signification of the word, is this where you begin, or do you want me to read more? Okay. The literal signification of the word is, among the eastern occultists of the north, a circular wind, a whirlwind. But in this instance, it is a term to denote the ceaseless and eternal cosmic motion, or rather, the force that moves it, which force is tacitly accepted as the deity but never named. It is the eternal Karana, the ever-acting cause. Secret Doctrine, page 93. Secret Doctrine, volume 1, page 93.
Thank you. Any thoughts or questions about this? Oi Ha Hu. It even sounds like a circular wind, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So you may remember way back in the proem, literally on page 2 of the Secret Doctrine, after a lengthy introduction, HPB describes the motion represented by Oi Ha Hu as the only attribute of the one life. Can we get a reader for this section?
Yeah, Martha, can you read that for us too, please?
In one absolute attribute, which is itself eternal, ceaseless motion, is called in esoteric parlance the great breath, which is the perpetual motion of the universe in the sense of limitless, ever-present space. That which is motionless cannot be divine. But then there is nothing, in fact, and reality absolutely motionless within the universal soul.
Okay, so you just, even though I can't tell you what this motion is, I can tell you what it isn't. It isn't something traveling from point A to point B. This has to do with the livingness that has impressed itself on ever-present space. We've talked about this a lot in the first dozen or so webinars on the Secret Doctrine. Okay, So let's take a look at the A section of the commentary on verse 4, which references the first half of the verse. Can we get a reader starting at the little letter A, this sloka?
Antonella, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. This shloka gives again a brief analysis of the hierarchies of the Dhyan Chauhans, called Devas, gods in India, or the conscious intelligent powers in nature. To this hierarchy correspond the actual types into which humanity may be divided. For humanity as a whole is in reality a materialized, though as yet imperfect, expression thereof. The army of the boys is a term closely connected with the mystery of sound and speech, as an effect and corollary of the cause, divine thought. As beautifully expressed by P. Christian, the learned author of the History of Magic and of L'Homme Rouge des Tuileries, the words spoken by, as well as the name of, every individual largely determine his future fate. Why? Because when our soul mind creates or evokes a thought, the representative sign of that thought is self-engraved upon the astral fluid, which is the receptacle and, so to say, the mirror of all the manifestations of being.
Thanks, Antonella.
Thank you.
Any thoughts or questions about this paragraph? I'd like to remind you that astral fluid, as used in the 19th century, had a different meaning than this strictly astral plane that we, which is the sixth plane of the cosmic physical plane, sixth subplane of the cosmic physical. It's more pervasive than that. In some references, it basically includes all the non-visible world, and it's hard to pin down. You have to take it in context to pin down exactly what it's referring to. Often, for instance, it refers to the Akashic, which is what I think's happening here. I think he's talking about the Akashic records. At any rate, let's take.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. You got a couple of hands up. Let's go with Malia first.
Okay, a couple of slides back, Francis, you mentioned that the fact that the motion was not linear. And it occurred to me to wonder if the motion was like that of sound, which was basically vibration.
Right.
And doesn't have the usual linear aspect of it.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, which is, all of this is sounded forth. All of creation, the entire manifested universe is sounded forth, right?
Right.
And that is the vibration that holds our universe into form aspect. In addition to that, you have the circular motion representing cycles within that sound field. So both are going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the highest point of view, in fact, from the point of view outside the universe itself, the entire thing is a Maya created by these two elements, which are the sounded word and this cyclic wind, right? Of course, within the universe, we have all levels of reality moving towards spirit, right? But very good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you. That feels very satisfying.
Good. Anyone else?
Yes, Martha. Hold on a minute. Sorry.
Following on what, thanks, Bill, what was just said, then the super essence, the super divine, the super
completely pure, is silence. That in the quaternary of the Gnostics, the first element is silence. And
Yeah.
so we're talking about here would be like depth, would be the transitional that creative force, but we participate in it in some very small way, in some element, in terms of our thought process. So that when it says we evoke a thought and it's written, it's self-engraved upon the astral fluid, it's really describing the power of occult activities. Isn't that?
Yes, absolutely. And you're anticipating the text itself because that's where she goes. So, kudos. Yeah, this is really a Toys R Us kind of thing. We are this because we are part of it. And in our speaking, we mirror this on an infinitesimal level. But he gets into, well, there's some old commentary, teaching story actually from the Anugita that gets into the two kinds of speech, which are silent speech, sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not, and noisy speech, which I like. Actually, he divides them into noiseless and noisy speech. So we'll get there in a little bit. Thanks, Martha. Any other thoughts or questions?
Joe has a comment about what DK says about the astral. Go ahead, please, Joe.
Well, in esoteric healing, when DK puts forth HPB's use of the word astral, he says that it is actually his term etheric, which then would correspond to everything on the cosmic physical plane, which is all etheric. And it lines up with the mirror, which is then the etheric double.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and certainly that's where the Akashic records would be, relating it specifically to the statement made here on where it's recorded on the astral fluid. Well, the Akashic records are certainly in the cosmic etheric level, so that holds. Yeah, the first four subplanes of the cosmic physical planes are the cosmic etheric, and is it the I can't remember. Is it the monadic plane? I'm remembering. It's an old memory, though. Might be the Atmic plane, that the Akashic records that record all events, all thoughts. The records are kept impermeable at those levels. But it's definitely an etheric substance. Yeah, good point, Joe. Anyone else? Okay, let's take a look at the... let's see where, yeah. At a description of the two main classes of devas referenced in this first sentence here. Could we get a reader for this?
Okay, let's go to Rosanna. Can you read that for us, please?
How do I unmute? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Unmuted. That's how.
Okay. And I'm reading A or B. I'm sorry.
Read them both. Go ahead.
The devas on the evolutionary path, the great builders of the solar system, and those under them who have passed the human stage, respond to the sound of the word, and with conscious realization, collaborate with the one who has breathed it forth, and thus the work is carried out. The devas on the involutionary arc, the lesser builders, who have not passed through the human stage, also respond to the sound, but unconsciously or perforce, and through the power of the initiated vibrations, build the required forms out of their own substance.
Thank you. Rosanna, was it?
Yes.
Yes, great. nice to have you with us. By the way, I know there's some new attendees, and if you're feeling especially brave, send a note in the chat box to BL that you'd be willing to read, and that's always useful for us to have a variety of readers. We'd like to include as many of you as possible. Okay.
Okay, Francis?
Yeah.
I just was looking it up in answer to your question a minute ago. On the divine planes, the cosmic planes, plane 1, the logoic or divine, is the sea of fire. Plane 2, the monadic, love, wisdom, is the acacia.
Okay. All right. Well, good. My memory held. That's what I thought.
And then I think this gets further into what Joe was saying. Plane 3, the atmic, is the ether. And then plane 4 is the plane of Buddhi, of at one-ment, and that's air. Plane 5 is fire, and it's a reflection of the sea of fire. Plane 6 is the astral light, and it's a reflection of the acacia. And the physical plane is ether, and it's a reflection of the atmic ether. So
okay, interesting.
that's in Light of the Soul, pages
okay.
334 and 335.
I wonder if that's interesting. That's another discussion. From another point of view, the 4 highest subplanes, the adimonadic, atmic, and buddhic, are etheric, are the first 4 subplanes of the ethers, just like on the physical plane of the cosmic physical plane. It always sounds like I'm speaking Greek when I speak about these planes. But anyway, the first 4 subplanes of those are also the lesser etheric that relate up. So there's both those ways of looking at it, and it's interesting to hear this iteration though, because it actually gives you more information. I like that third subplane is the etheric proper. Interesting. Okay. Atmic is etheric proper. Okay. Next up, it's the next sentence that we'll look at. I'll read it. To this hierarchy correspond the actual types into which humanity may be divided. For humanity as a whole is in reality a materialized, though as yet imperfect, expression thereof. Yeah. Okay. I was reading back. This statement refers to the human forms which the Deva kingdom literally produces out of its own substance, which are themselves in process, and the forms are themselves in process of coming into its final aspect. Next, the army of the voice is a term closely connected with the mystery of sound and speech as an effect and corollary of the cause divine thought. Now, this is a big topic, so let's take a moment to explore some quotes on the army of the voice by D.K. Rule 10 makes it clear that as disciples, we must consider the methods and rules, quote, whereby the army works within the veils of Maya. D.K. elaborates on the subject of the word, which is the initiating force for the army of the voice, in Initiation Human and Solar. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes, David, can you read that for us, please?
Have I been unmuted? Can you hear me?
You are unmuted.
Okay, good. The basis of all manifested phenomena is the enunciated word, or the word spoken with power, that is, with the full purpose of the will behind it. Every word, differentiated or synthesized, affects the Deva kingdoms, and hence the form-building aspects of manifestation. No sound is ever made without producing a corresponding response in Deva substance, and driving multitudes of tiny lives to take specific forms. These forms persist and carry out their functions just as long as the sound which caused them is prolonged, and the specific will energy of the one who initiated the sound is directed towards the living form. This is equally true of the solar logos, enunciating the Om, and thus producing the solar system, of a planetary logos, sounding his planetary word, and producing a planetary scheme, of an adept, producing results for the helping of humanity on the physical plane, and of an ordinary human being who, in much differentiated, diversified speech, expresses an inner purpose or state of mind, and thus builds a form or vehicle in Deva substance.
Thank you, David. Nicely read. Okay.
Francis?
Yeah.
I think it's important to point out that when this is talking about living form, it's going way beyond what science considers life.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Because everything in this philosophy has a spark of life, at least.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Right. Living form basically means all discrete units of consciousness, and those can be from the elemental, mineral, plant, animal, and human kingdoms, as well as the super kingdoms such as soul, the kingdoms of God and beyond, right? So all are living forms, units of consciousness, right? Thank you, Michael. So the generative power of the word is why it is considered to be a feminine principle, personified as Vak or Vash, who literally births the substantive realm. In the Rig Veda and after, Vak becomes one with Sarasvati, goddess of wisdom. Finally, let's take a look at this quote from Raised Initiation, which more closely focuses on the army of the voice. Could we get a reader for this?
Dana Marie, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. These particular devas in their serrated ranks are the directive agents of the divine energy which implements the purposes of deity upon the physical plane. They work only on etheric levels, either upon our physical plane or on the cosmic etheric levels. They are therefore active in the realm of Maya, which is the etheric plane as we usually understand it, or upon the planes of the spiritual triad. They are not active on the three gross physical levels or upon the astral or mental planes, nor are they active upon the highest or logoic plane. There they are implicit or latent, but not active. They are the great impulsive factors in manifestation, organizing substance, directing the multiplicity of lives and beings who constitute the form through which God expresses divinity. In a peculiar sense, they are the embodiment of the divine purpose upon the planes of the monad and of the triad, just as the aggregate of energies in man's etheric body is the result of his inner direction and the cause of his outer manifestation. To understand more fully the function of the Deva forces, a man must arrive at some understanding of the forces in his etheric body, which, in their turn, are the consequences of his point of attainment. and attainment demonstrated by his astral, emotional, and mental natures and activities. These indicate his point of development. Ray's Initiation 179.
Any thoughts or questions about this?
Let me see. Let me see what I've got. Leslie says, as you've pointed out, the definition of living is broad and wide-ranging. It's time to update the Montessori pre-primary curricula, which separates living and non-living examples for young children.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any other thoughts or questions?
That's all I see right now.
Okay, so one of the essential statements here is that these particular devas in their serried ranks are the great impulsive factors. Now, this doesn't mean that, that they're of an impulsive nature, right? This has that same quality as the impulsion of Aries, that is initiating. They are the great initiating factors in manifestation. Organizing substance, directing the multiplicity of lives and beings who constitute the forms through which God expresses divinity. It's just pure third aspect stuff, right? They're overseen by the Buddhas of activity. In DK class this morning, we were reading about how the eye of God looking out of the triangle, everybody's familiar with that image, is actually David. And you think, wait a minute, it's the Logos himself, isn't it? No, because it's the devas that allow deity to bridge to see, quote unquote, into the world of inhabited forms. So they're, to say that they're wide ranging is a gross understatement. They here it says, who constitute the forms. No, wait a minute. Directing the multiplicity of lives. Now, these lives are Davic lives, and the beings who actually constitute the forms. So these are elemental lives who in themselves are the forms. Now, these aren't only physical forms. They go all the way up through all the realms of matter. So the higher bodies of, for instance, a Master of Wisdom are made up of forms with a tremendous rate of vibration, and they are made of of Davic substance, right? In that case, very high Davic beings involved. It's really an extraordinary teaching. So, anyone else on this? Okay. Next up. So can we get a reader for this section? And this is going to bring it down into humanity and the effect of the word in humanity. It's thus addressing what Martha Gallagher was talking about earlier. Okay.
Lorraine, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The words spoken by, as well as the name of, every individual largely determine his future fate. Why? Because when our soul, mind, creates or evokes a thought, the representative sign of that thought is self-engraved upon the astral fluid, which is the receptacle and, so to say, the mirror of all the manifestations of being. The sign expresses the thing. The thing is the hidden or occult virtue of the sign. To pronounce a word is to evoke a thought and make it present. The magnetic potency of the human speech is the commencement of every manifestation in the occult world. To utter a name is not only to define a being, an entity, but to place it under and condemn it through the emission of the word, verbum, to the influence of one or more occult potencies. Things are, for every one of us, that which it, the word, makes them while naming them, the word, verbum, or the speech of every man is quite unconsciously to himself, a blessing or a curse. This is why our present ignorance about the properties or attributes of the idea, as well as about the attributes and properties of matter, is often fatal to us.
It's heavy-duty material. Any thoughts or questions about this?
Francis.
Yeah,
it brings to mind in the in one of the things in Genesis about man naming the beasts of the field.
Oh yes, indeed. Yeah, I think it is that kind of naming. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, good example. Anyone else?
Francis, I just say that this is the summary of energy follows thought.
Yeah, this is under the hood, right? This is all the mechanism under the hood of energy follows thought. Right, good one, Joe. Yeah. In Treatise on Cosmic Fire, decay applies these ideas specifically to the disciple and initiate. Could we get a reader for this?
Carrie, can you read that for us? You are, oops, now you're self-muted. There you go.
The greater the progress that is made along the path of approach to the mysteries, the greater the care in speech must be taken by the aspirant. This is necessary for three reasons. First, owing to his stage in evolution, he is able to enforce his words in a manner which would surprise him could he but see on the mental plane. He builds more accurately than the average man. His subsequent thought form is more strongly vitalized, and it performs the function whereon it is sent by the sound or speech with greater precision. Second, any word spoken and consequent thought form built, unless along the higher path and not based on personality impulses, is apt to cause a barrier of mental matter between a man and his goal. This matter or separating wall has to be dissipated before further advance can be made, and this process is karmic and unavoidable. Third, speech is very largely a mode of communication on the physical levels. On the subtler levels, whereon the worker stands, and in his communications with his fellow workers and chosen cooperators, it will play an ever-lessening part. Intuitive perception and telepathic interplay will distinguish the intercourse between aspirants and disciples.
Thank you, Carrie. It's a sobering teaching. Any word spoken and consequent thought form built is apt to cause a barrier of mental matter that has to be dissipated before further advance can be made. Wow, that doesn't stop you in your verbal tracks. I don't know what would. Okay, next up, could we get a reader for this?
Michael, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, names and words are either beneficent or maleficent. They are, in a certain sense, either venomous or health-giving, according to the hidden influences attached by supreme wisdom to their elements. That is to say, to the letters which compose them, and the numbers correlative to these letters. This is strictly true as an esoteric teaching accepted by all the Eastern schools of occultism. In the Sanskrit, as also in the Hebrew and all other alphabets, every letter has its occult meaning and its rationale. It is a cause and an effect of a preceding cause, and a combination of these very often produces the most magical effect. The vowels, especially, contain the most occult and formidable potencies. The mantras, esoterically, magical rather than religious, are chanted by the Brahmins, and so are the Vedas and other scriptures.
Thanks, Michael. Any thoughts or questions about this? So, that which activates the vibratory and psychological impact of the spoken word is its numerical properties, as well as the sound sustaining quality of vowels, as in the Sanskrit we considered earlier. Thus, we might hypothesize that words from languages such as Sinjar and Sanskrit were originally created in such a way that they could vibratorily demonstrate the meaning ascribed to them, so that when intoned by an adept, the Sinjar word for eagle, for example, could draw that presence to the intoning magician. Of course, this whole area is a ripe field for glamour, as so much magical practice is. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yes. Martha, can you, oops. There you go, you're self-mute. Yep.
The Army of the Voice, is that where we are?
Right.
Yes. The Army of the Voice is the prototype of the host of the Logos, or the Word, of the Sefer Jazira, called in the Secret Doctrine the one number issued from no number, the one eternal principle. The esoteric theogony begins with the one, manifested, therefore not eternal in its presence and being, if eternal in its essence. The number of the numbers and numbered, the latter proceeding from the voice, the feminine vash, statarupa, of the 100 forms or nature. It is from this number 10, or creative nature, the mother, the occult cipher or naught, ever procreating and multiplying in union with the unit one, or the spirit of life, that the whole universe proceeded. I just want to refer you to the second volume in Secret Doctrine, how it applies in Gnostic. It's amazing. It's this is kind of breathtaking for me. In this whole section that we've been reading in regard to the impulsing of words from numbers and numbers from spaces as seen in the universe, in the constellations and all of that, that she can put this into language just like, it's hard, it's amazing. It's just, I'm sorry, I'm kind of elaborating here, but so the Army of the Voice is the counterpoint to, say, the what we call the Great Silence, or the I'm lost, Francis. I'm sorry, I can't find the words.
That's all right. You did the Army of the Voice. If you're going to look for a counterpart, it would be in the unmanifest logos. In other words, pure spirit, and everything else, right? So it would be the Army of the Voice. But in fact, as you know, as I understand it, they are not separated out like that. That they're in constant interactiveness. So when the intent of the issuing entity, the logoic entity, when the intent is expressed or impulsed, at that point, the Army of the Voice is in absolute accord with that, the intent of the deity, working without degradation of that intent, and building the forms that specifically allow for that intent to be realized in time and space.
Thank you.
So in that sense, it's all encompassing.
Very wonderful.
Okay, so working backwards, let's work backwards through this statement. No number is the one eternal principle from which emanates the one number, who is the word, by whose utterance the army of the voice becomes the host of the logos. What's emphasized here is that the one is simultaneously the many, the host of the logos, and that the apparent transition from the one to the host is affected by use of the word. This one is the first singularity, the creative third logos, who is, we're here told, one with its inherent diversity. For this reason, there is only the duality of one number and no number. All else is inherent in the one number. There is only no number and one number, for within one number is all diversity. HB expands on this a little later in the Secret Doctrine. Could we get a reader for this this statement?
Sure.
You have to pay close attention. This one is really intense.
Hang on, Francis. You keep referencing the singularity. And interestingly, in science, in the center of a black hole is a gravitational singularity.
Yeah.
A one-dimensional point which contains a huge mass in an infinitely small space, where density and gravity become infinite and space-time curves infinitely, and where the laws of physics as we know them cease to operate.
Right. Yeah, it's you know, I would love to have a DK paragraph on black holes. That would be amazing. What are those things? You know, we can surmise, and there's some interesting, you know, speculative ideas around this. But you know, it'd be really interesting to read a detailed scientific description and then try to apply esoteric wisdom to that. I haven't done that. That would be a really interesting thing to do.
It would be interesting to consider that black hole of the Milky Way galaxy, for instance, as the one life which formed everything within the galaxy.
Well, it's still a form. It just like the eye of God is made of Davic substance. It is the means by which the one life, given your hypothesis, it would be the means by which the one life would be accessed. But you're certainly not going to stick into this in this separated life if you get anywhere near one of those things. But yeah, and it's also, I find it very interesting that they've hypothesized that they stand at the center of every galaxy, which, you can hardly resist the occult comparison to the point in the center of the sphere or circle, which is often described as the doorway into subtler planes of reality. So
that's where I go with it.
Yeah. I mean, given what we have, that seems a very possible hypothesis. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so let's have a reader for this.
I'll give it a go.
Ah, great.
The first is the second, because the first cannot really be numbered or regarded as the first, as that is the realm of noumena in its primary manifestation, the threshold to the world of truth, or sat, through which the direct energy that radiates from the one reality, the nameless deity, reaches us.
Okay, so it's fascinating, isn't it? The first, which, going back to the idea of the first singularity, that, who is the initiator of the manifested universe, cannot actually be the first, because you can't number the first, because the first is actually no number. It's from the realm of the numberless. Or as she says it, it is the realm of noumena in its primary manifestation, the threshold of the world of truth or sat. Of course, you're really stuck in English, with the kind of vocabulary necessary to describe this, because primary manifestation just means first. So, what are you going to do? But it has been often talked about, and when you run out of words, you just capitalize the ones you have, right? One reality, the nameless deity, which is also no number, the realm of no number. Okay.
Francis.
Yeah.
I was trying to read a couple of comments earlier, but it really helps if I take myself off mute. Martha says this seems very significant, that to a lesser degree we may use numbers in thoughts to create mining.
Miming?
Mining, M-I-N-I-N-G. And then she goes on. Yeah, go ahead and explain that.
I should have said mining of thought forms, that we don't create thought forms, we find them, is what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And then she goes on to say to Michael, your statement of black holes makes it seem that the secret doctrine material and astrophysics are coming together.
No question about that. I think as science advances, and there's going to be a collision sometime in Aquarius, we're going to probably with the much more common experience of etheric vision, we're going to see a new version of occult science that explains a lot of physical science in terms of occult language. It's I'll be standing first in line on that library queue, but that's going to be a while still.
And then Karsten says, I sometimes think the black hole is the pralaya when the earth is or spirit is out of form.
Yeah, it has a pralaic quality, but yeah, it's true, and it may be associated with it, but pralaic energy itself is pure Shivic spirit. That is to say, no form aspect can stand in its presence, right, as we know it. It is completely devoid of form as we know it. And a black hole is a kind of transitional device between, what works within the laws of physics as form and what bends those laws and ultimately takes us into the unknown in connection with those laws. But it's definitely the physical plane analogy, I think, of pralaya. So it seems to me. So yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So the esoteric theogony begins with the one manifested, therefore not eternal in its presence and being, if eternal in its essence. Again, this is the difference between the first and third logos. What he's talking about here is the third. The number of the numbers and the numbered, the latter proceeding from the voice, the female Vash Sartarupa of the 100 forms or nature. As just discussed, these three represent progressive stages of manifestation. We also We also read about this triplicity 2 pages back. We also read about this triplicity 2 pages back in this section on the Sephiroth. Here's the quote: "Thus was the world made through 3 seraphim, Sephir, Saphar, and Sipur, or through number, numbers, and numbered." It's no coincidence that the first of these seraphim, named Sephir, is the root of the term Sephiroth, since it represents Kether, the highest of the 10 Sephira, followed by Saphar and Sipur. Thus we have in the position of the causal 3 Sephira, number, numbers, and numbered. Any thoughts or questions? Use of the tree of life holds in HPB's next statement, and I've copy pasted it here. It is from this number 10, our creative nature, the mother, the occult cipher or not, ever procreating and multiplying in union with the unit 1, or the spirit of life, that the whole universe proceeded. The not, or 0, in union with the unit 1, is represented in Hindu art by Shiva and Shakti. Now, this is a particular use of the 0. It's the 0 after the 1, not the 0 before the 1. You see the difference, right? Because here, after the 1, it expresses total diversity, the entirety of manifestation in all its diversity, right? And therefore is the feminine counterpart to the pure spirit of the one life. This passage from the Anukita describes, oh, you know what? We're running out of time here.
Okay, and I wanted to tell you, you have a comment from Karsten on the one before. You have the, okay, I'm going to murder this, I'm sorry. You have the Ein Sop R above the Kether.
You're the what?
Yeah. Karsten, let me unmute you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, above the Keter you have three whales. Before the number 1, the Ein Sop and the Ein Sop Hour.
Yeah, that's right.
Today on a Kabbalah course, that is before anything happens, there was only light. And that's this three. So that must be for the 1, before Keter.
It is indeed. This is the third logos, right? This is not ayin. I'm really glad you said that. In fact, there are charts that show the ayin and the sof, and the ayin sof, as a combination, standing above this Kether position, which is this downward radiance, right? So yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, folks. Gosh, I'm so sorry about the beginning of this. I've never been caught so unawares. But what happened was, my cloud just wouldn't update my document. So it was an ancient version of the document, like when I very first started. So I literally had to email it to myself, and then copy paste the password into my other computer's email. It was just a real mess. So I thank you for bearing with me on that. And next time I will do a fail safe so that can't possibly happen. You always solve the problems after they've bitten you.
Sorry. Yeah. Scott wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Scott.
Doesn't have anything to do with what you just said, but it goes back to Just as a wrap up here, we have 2 1s going on here. You're talking about the 10, and it's the 1 there is not the same. 0 is not the same as 0. And I think so. What we have here is 2 1s, and I think that's what shows up in the pi number of double ones, and also why in the Fibonacci series it has a double 1. The 0 goes with the 1, and the 1 goes with the 1, and they're double 1s. So the 1 goes with the 2 rather. You have a 0 1 and a 1 2. The double 1s are what we're talking about.
Yeah, and so what Scott's talking about it with the double 1 is 2 stages of oneness, right? So you have it's 1, and then you cross the threshold, and this is the Fibonacci as well. You cross the threshold, and you again have the 1 appears, and that one would be as I understand it, would be the third logos, or the one here depicted, this 1.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Something like that.
Something like that. Unless you're seeing that second 1 as the 0 of the Shakti, which is all diversity. But I think that's you define these in accordance with the system you're using. But in this system, using 1 and 0, the 0, basically you take that 0 and you run it out until there's an infinite number of zeros. In other words, the potential of all diversity. That's what this 0 represents, right? Which is, of course, the feminine principle and all its diversity. So that's, I think, what's meant in this 1 0. Right, the not, right? Okay, folks, let's get some dates for next time.
Okay, the next Secret Doctrine is going to be on the 19th of July. And the next Secret Teaching of All Ages will be on the 5th of July.
Yes, on the 5th of July. So 2 weeks, is that right? Yeah, we're 2 weeks out, and we'll be Secret Teaching. Right now, by the way, there's a tremendous interactiveness going on between these webinars if you're in one and not in the other, especially as we've entered this study of Gnosticism, which holds a lot of the so-called teachings in its doctrine. So yeah, hope you can join us in a couple of weeks for the Secret Teachings of All Ages, and then again next month on the 3rd Sunday for this Secret Doctrine. Good. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.